Ryan Patrick here. We're going to talk to you guys today about the kettlebell swing and some of the problems that we see with that. So the kettlebell swing is a ballistic hip hinge, a deadlift pattern that is done explosively, and it's a really tremendous exercise that we like to use. There's a concentric portion where you're producing force and the bell's swinging out. There's an eccentric force or a deceleration when the bell's coming down that you have to control. And there's a rapid change of direction at the bottom where you have to control muscularly, and then passively at the top, although we can create a little bit of pulse at the top to produce more downward force. So it's a very great exercise, but the thing that you need to master first is really learning how to produce a sufficient hip hinge. And a lot of people go wrong there because they just don't have the ability to dissociate back motion from hip motion. And so we start everyone out learning that hip hinge and making sure that it looks really great under all conditions before we start to add that element of velocity to it. So in its basic iteration, our hip hinge is going to have a narrow stance. We're going to fold at the hips, pushing our butt back as far as we can go. And we're going to tell people to get back until they can feel their hamstrings. Now, in this position, a lot of people will start to round their back, they'll start to bend their knees. A lot of things can go wrong. Even foot position is important, where a lot of people have been told to get back into their heels, and so they start to rock their toes up off the ground. We actually want to maintain a tripod foot, so contact with the heel and the pinky and big toes. We want some tension in the hamstrings. We want our spine long and strong. We want our chin packed. Once somebody can learn to replicate this motion over and over without a lot of shifting, we'll then start to teach them the kettlebell swing. So our first cue for this is there's really two key positions. The top position, which is basically a plank. We've got tight abs, tight quads, a tight butt, and even the lats are a little bit tight, pulling the shoulders down. Momentum's going to take over as that kettlebell comes down, and we're going to tell people to play chicken with it. So we're essentially aiming to hit yourself in the crotch. But as it gets close, we're going to have them hinge into that same pattern that we worked on. Now the stance here is a little bit wider than what we start to teach the hinge because the bell's got to fit through your legs. There's just a slight amount of turnout, but not a tremendous amount. And when you finish, you're going to have very minimal knee bend, but very maximal hip bend. And so we don't want to see a squatting swing, because once you go to squat, we've got a long lever now from your low back to the bell, which is going to produce a lot of torque for your low back. So we tell people to stay tall and tight in that plank position, hinge back, and when the hamstrings get tight, we're going to use them just like a slingshot. So you're going to contract the glutes to fire back, get into that plank position. So everything in between those two positions, at least in the beginning, should be sheer momentum. And so we want people to learn that. So when we go to start the swing, what we're going to do is set the bell out in front of us, reach for it, and we're going to get just a little bit of tilt here. So my lats are on stretch now. A lot of people forget how to use their upper body when it comes to a swing, and so by starting here, we can actually get people in a nice hinge and have them pull with their lats to engage here. So when the lats contract, they connect to some thoracolumbar fascia, basically making a big X across the back of your body. And when they're tight, it's going to create a nice bracing effect for your core and low back. So it's definitely something we want to keep in play as we teach people to swing. So we're going to start here, we're going to hike the bell, and then it's a plank at the top. And at the bottom, we're waiting on that bell to get into a nice deep hip hinge. When the lats get tight, you may see some people bend the elbows at the top. It's not because their arms are loose or that they're lifting the bell. They're tight under here, and that bell momentum is just carrying them up. Some people are okay with the elbow bend, some are not. Either way, I want to make sure that you're tight in the lats. So the kettlebell swing, just to review, it's got its roots in a hip hinge. So before you learn to swing the bell, you have to learn how to hip hinge. It's not a squat. There's not a lot of knee bend. The RKC, or hard style swing that we teach, has a lot of hip drive, a lot of hip punch. It's different than the sports swing. We're going with just this because we like that hard style. I like the hard breathing because it helps produce force at the abs at the top and reinforce that plank position that we're trying to hit. Overall, a great exercise can be done for metabolic reasons, can be done for strength reasons or even as supplemental reasons for accessory work to try and build the posterior of your chain with the glutes, the hamstrings, the low back. This has been your intro to the kettlebell swing and how we teach it at Peak Fitness and Sports Training. I'm Ryan Patrick. Check out our website.